Hey, it's John from Level the Playing Field. Don't forget to follow us on our social media platforms. We're on TikTok at LPF Podcast, Instagram at LPF Podcast, and Twitter at LPF Podcast 86. And while you're at it, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe on any platform that you're listening to our podcast.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Level the Playing Field. I'm Dave. I'm here with John as usual, and today we're joined by a special guest, our friend Andrew. What's up, Andrew?
What's going on, boys?
Too much. Andrew's going to be filling in from time to time. John abandons us in July, so he's getting his feet wet today. He's one of our, I don't even know why I'm telling anybody this.
He's one of our good friends, and he's asked to be on the pod several occasions. So now he's getting his shot to see how good he is on a mic.
None of that's true, and my filling in will be completely contingent on the offer that I receive following this episode.
As long as I don't have to be on time, we'll be fine.
Dips into the well early.
So over the weekend, the Warriors won their fourth title in 8 years. And I don't know. I can't even think of a last time since maybe like the Oilers or the Islanders that a team has stayed together. Like the core of a team has been intact through like a run like that.
Would you say the Chicago Blackhawks have done something like that during their run?
You've definitely poked a hole in that immediately. I also, as I was saying, I was like the Kings kind of.
The Chicago Bulls.
Yeah, that also happened after that.
Yeah, in basketball.
This clearly don't have a single clue what I'm talking
about. Also, the New England Patriots, they've been pretty good.
Yeah, but that's where it falls apart. Like, because their core, one guy, if you want to say like Tom Brady's a core, but otherwise, like the team is completely different all the time.
Sure. So they're impressive for a different reason, though.
Yeah.
So looking at this, it's see, when you look at it like this, like how it's written, fourth title in 8 years, kind of like for me, mathematically, like every other year they're winning, right? But they had a little break there, right? They did 15 and then 17, 18, and now 22, right? So they didn't look great. Not last season, the season before when they finished last, right? Like they were injured and like all those circumstances, sure, but like they didn't look great. And then they made it to the play-in last season and got eliminated in the play-in. So it looked like they were returning and that things could be better. But when they were talking about the Golden State Warriors, they were saying like a great team, not sure if they'll get back to the top of the hill again. And so here they are back at it. And I think that for me is pretty impressive, and that they've done it basically the same way, playing the same way with those three main guys, and they're finding players. So they had Iguodala, they had Livingston, now they have Wiggins. So they're looking to find Jordan Poole. They're looking to find these guys to sort of complement the Splash Bros and Draymond, and they've done it again.
Yeah, it helps that you could be like super creative and just basically have an unlimited payroll too. Like they're like fourth or fifth best players making like $33 million a year, right? Not many teams can afford that or fit that under the cap. Or
Are they over the cap? Are they paying into the luxury
they're
tax?
paying like $340 million a year or something like that. They're like way over. Like next year they're going to be penalized like dollar for dollar what they go over the luxury tax because of how far over the tax and how often they've been over the tax.
But hey, I guess you can afford it when you're getting all that revenue from winning championships.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that's definitely what it is, right? Like And that's what we were hoping the Raptors would do. And when Kawhi was up to be re-signed after we won, we're like, okay, we just generated all this extra revenue. Now let's put it into Kawhi. And it seems like, well, definitely he decided not to come back, right? It wasn't really up to us.
Yeah, the money offer was good.
Yeah.
There was never a
But
complaint
we offered
about
more
that, right?
because
So
we could. The bird rights,
yeah.
right?
So
I gotta say, I agree with John. The fact that they came back after 2 down years to win another championship makes it all that more impressive. But also, if you drill into some of the details, they lost in, what was it, 2016, after being up 3-1 to LeBron. Like, that was an absolutely historic finals that you could argue they, were that close to winning. And then the other finals they lost, they had Durant and Klay Thompson hurt. And then their 2 down years, they basically were without Steph and Klay Thompson for both of those seasons. So, it's not just 4 in 8, it's 6 finals in 8. And the 2 that didn't make it to the finals, they were without their star players.
definitely.
On level the playing field, we don't make the argument that the Raptors wouldn't have won if Durant was healthy. You can take that to your San Francisco talk radio.
But yeah,
I apologize.
Yeah, those are really good points. And I guess for me, like when the Raptors beat Golden State, because that's what we're going to talk about, that the Raptors beat Golden State, it was hard to like dislike them. Like,
yeah, I've never,
like, you know what I mean? Like, they're not a team that like is built to like be hated. And so when there is no vested interest, and like I'm watching between the Boston Celtics and the Golden State Warriors, like I didn't want Boston to win.
Oh, fuck that.
Boston doesn't need to win any more stuff.
Nobody outside of Boston ever wants a Boston sports team to win anything.
All right. And I even like Jason Tatum. I think he's a great player. I think he has a great approach. He's not like overly lippy. He's just very good, very skilled. But like, nah, he's on Boston, so I don't care for them. So
yeah, even like John's pointed out several times that I turn into the person that just hates teams because they're like good all the time. And yeah, they've never fallen into that category. Steph's super likable. I like Durant when he was on. Well, I like him anyways, but like, so when he was on the team, that didn't hurt them. Draymond is up and down. Sometimes he's annoying, but other times I'm like, yeah.
But you love his press conference attitude and his approach to people that talk shit to him.
Yeah, I do.
So he was at it today during their championship parade. I don't know if you've seen any of those clips yet. Oh man, he was on like a couple of interviews with like local sports TV, and he was just swearing all over the broadcast. And you can see the reporters like every time they do like, oh, Draymond, and he runs away. So he's having a good time. I wanted to quickly talk about all this conversation about Steph Curry winning the Finals MVP and like how that sort of like boosts his resume. Like, I didn't really think he needed this like Finals MVP to like boost his resume, but even he's kind of like alluded to it in some of the conversations after winning the championship that like this is something that like adds to his legacy.
I think that having Durant on the team is for those championships is something that's gonna like be a knock on both of them, right? Like, people are gonna say that Durant never would have won if he didn't go there. And then people are also going to say that Durant was the best player on the team when he was on Golden State, right? So there weren't really like Curry's, like, so say, for example, you're making an argument that I've not made, but alluded to a couple of times, that Curry is the best player of his generation, right? People are going to say, well, 2 of the titles he won, he wasn't even the best player on his team, right? So winning the Finals MVP, where he was clearly the leader and the best player, which probably I don't know for sure, but I'm assuming was also true in the first title.
Yeah.
That just kind of cements it a bit more. Probably for as much as you can value like a media voted on awards, right? Like at the end of the day, like, who really gives a shit what those guys think?
No. Well, he's also the only unanimously voted MVP in the history of the NBA. So he's got that feather in his cap. But he's not going to win any defensive awards, that's for sure.
I also think, when you've been that successful, you need to find things to motivate you to keep going. So maybe a Finals MVP was in his list of things that he still wanted to achieve before he throttled down.
Yeah, I saw it on an Instagram post again. Like this year, he was the All-Star Game MVP. So he was the Western Conference Finals MVP. I didn't even know that was a thing until I saw it on the post.
It's brand new.
Yeah, brand new. He crowned himself, and then he was the Finals MVP, and then he won the championship. So that was his trophy rack for the 2021-2022 season.
Who
So
won the MVP? Was Jokic win again?
yeah,
MVP?
back to back. Joel's still crying about that.
So you mentioned Tatum. Did I saw something, but it was on. I think it was on one of my like burner account notifications. So I don't know if it's really, I don't know if it's really true or not. Is Jason Tatum really talking already, like the day after the finals, about changing his number to number 24, or did I just get faked out?
I didn't see that. I wouldn't be shocked to hear it though. He's obsessed with Kobe Bryant.
That's what I was gonna say. I was like, dude, we get it. You knew Kobe Bryant. Like,
No,
chill
he's
the
like
fuck out.
really, really like obsessed with Kobe Bryant. Like he was wearing like some of the same stuff that Kobe wore during the finals. Like he was wearing like the same outfit that Kobe wore for finals. Like he's
Holy
like
shit, man.
he's like very deep in his like Kobe Bryant like idol
They
tree.
probably met like twice. Like, he kind of needs to chill the fuck out.
Yeah. So
Dave, I have a really important question.
Yeah.
Does it count as a burner account if you tell everybody that you have them? Or do you just have 10 Twitter accounts?
That's I don't know. I really only have 7.
Oh my God.
The show account, the personal account, and then 5 others that I made to cheat in a contest that we ended up losing.
Yeah. Well, so like what's the best name out of all these burner accounts?
Oh, that's fine. Oh, you have my phone.
I got your phone. I'm not checking either. Just not doing it.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember half of them. Randy Eckler's one of them.
Sperm Blaster 69.
No, they're all good names.
If you're using that as a burner, like that's just I think you're doing it wrong. Oh man, that's good. All right, well, that was the Golden State Warriors. So it'd be interesting to see what happens next year. Like there's already NBA talk with other teams, like Kyrie Irving talk already that
They're already not going to sign.
that they're going to let him walk because he's just not reliable, not a trustworthy teammate,
They'll be better off.
and that someone who's early in the runnings are the LA Lakers, of course. And so
Oh my god, that would be too perfect.
him rejoining LeBron and that being that. And then what was I watching? It was pardon the interruption. They were showing a clip from like the jump off or something like that. And they were saying that maybe they would even consider trying to trade Russell Westbrook so he'd go play with Kevin Durant, and then Kyrie Irving would go and play with LeBron James.
Existing teams in different cities.
Yeah, it's like playing NBA 2K, but in real life now. You can just like mix and match. So be interesting to see like what happens in the off season now, because like there's still talk with James Harden as well, right? And like kind of like what are they really going to do with him?
But what can they do? They signed him to a huge deal.
Yeah, but there's been talks about I forget the whole like setup for this, but it was more so like, are they gonna like see it through, or are they gonna just kind of like eat their crow and move on from the situation? But interesting off season, and then the draft is super soon. Like I feel like it's this coming weekend, so the turnaround on that is like super tight.
That is fast.
So lots of busy goings on, even though the NBA season's over, and arguably entering like the worst sports time of the year for me, where there's just going to be CFL and baseball on. And
CFL doesn't even count.
Yeah,
that's a bad time. Like, you know, I love baseball, and like July sucks.
Yeah,
dog days of summer, man.
That's why I stand by my statement that I'm not going to watch baseball until August.
Especially once you get around the All-Star break of baseball and there's literally nothing on, then you're fucked.
Yeah.
What the fuck are we gonna do?
Yeah, the material's really gonna dry up. So
hope you guys like Marvel.
You know Andrew does.
Yeah, force Andrew into a Marvel. Maybe I'll watch Lord of the Rings. We'll talk about that.
We can do a deep dive on my beer league stats and schedule.
Yeah. Just do the history of the Raiders.
Hey, you there! Do you like podcasts?
Are you tired of the bullshit?
Well, this is not the podcast for you.
Actually, it is, and we are
The Lords of Swine! We discuss nerd culture, and we drop every Tuesday
on any platform.
We're literally everywhere.
all
There you
the
go.
points per games leaders and the people who've come and gone.
There you go.
Yeah. Speaking of beer league hockey, Dave's mentioned that the Colorado Avalanche has taken this stranglehold on this series, but as we're currently looking at Game 3, Tampa Bay is leading 6-2. So, do you want to have some revisionist history on this statement, or?
No, I'll stand by the fact that I wrote that about 38 seconds after they won 7-0 in Game 2, and it looked like the Lightning might just give up the rest of the series. So that's okay.
Yeah, well,
But I guess a series never starts until you've lost at home, right? So
That's exactly right.
So, what do we think is it just the difference in home ice here that's making them show up, or is it coaching? Is it what do you think's going on here?
I think the altitude plays a huge role, right? Getting out of Colorado, where Tampa is more accustomed to playing at closer to sea level. Like they'll really be not an advantage for them, but it's not as much of a disadvantage as it is when they're playing in Colorado, right?
Yeah, Andy, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I think Tampa hasn't played a team like Colorado since the Leafs, right? The two teams they played after the Leafs were not known for their speed, and Colorado came out and they're twice as fast as the Leafs, and there's nobody on earth like Cale Makar at the moment. So I think they were a little shell shocked in Game 1. Obviously, Game 2 they just laid a giant egg, but Tampa's won 2 Stanley Cups in a row. They understand that a series isn't over just because they're down 2-0. I think they've been down 2-0 in this playoffs. So
they were against the Rangers, weren't they?
Exactly. So I don't think this series was over even after having lost 7-0, because if you're in the finals for a third straight year, you know that they're not going to roll over and die.
Right on. I don't have any expert analysis to add here.
So there's talk. This will be more of a question for Andrew. There's talk that on his current trajectory, obviously he's only like 3 years into his career or whatever, Cale Makar may have the makings of being like a top like 5 defenseman all time. Is that like crazy?
Well, I'll tell you what I think is crazy is all the talking heads comparing him to Bobby Orr, especially the fucking donkeys who never actually saw Bobby Orr play.
Everyone?
Well, I'm sure a couple of them are old enough to have seen Bobby Orr play, but it's a ridiculous comparison after having watched him play for one playoff season. Erik Karlsson looked just as good as Cale Makar does now for that playoff.
Erik Karlsson never had a 95-point season or whatever the fuck he had.
Well, he never played with the guys that Cale Makar's playing with in an offense like that, in a scoring era like this season presented, right? Like Erik Karlsson's skating for 4 or 5 years was unbelievable. He could skate circles around NHL players.
Yeah, he was best, bro.
Back when he had
and then he tore his Achilles, and he was never the same.
It's actually Achilles.
So coming back to your question, John or Dave, whoever asked the question, I mean, sure, could Cale Makar be one of the greatest of all time? Absolutely, because he's got the talent to do it. But to crown him first ballot Hall of Famer, best defenseman of all time after having watched him play for 2 months is ridiculous.
Would you say that if we want to crown him, that we can crown
him? For now, he is who we thought he was.
Got it. So I've become an expert in golf since going to the RBC Canadian Open. And so I'll open it up here with this comparison between LIV Golf and the PGA, and with the recent happenings at the US Open, and that there are players allowed from both tours or both organizations to compete. How did this turn out for those defects from the PGA Tour that went to LIV Golf?
Did any of them finish in the top like 30?
Look like a pretty piss poor appearance for a bunch of these guys. So is LIV Golf just the MLS of pro golf now?
I don't know. They had DJ. He flirts with being number one. Pretty much.
MLS can't afford to steal players like LIV Golf can.
I don't know. They had David Beckham when he was 87.
Yeah, and that Kaká. They Thierry Henry and Didier Drogba, all these world stars that have shown up in the that's my comparison. Even there's talks of Messi showing up in the MLS very soon.
Those are guys, our guys past their prime though, right? I mean, Live Golf's took guys, Dustin Johnson being at the top of that list who are in their prime.
Maybe
Bryson
he's past his
DeChambeau.
prime. That's why he just knew.
Shambo's a piece of shit.
I agree that he's a piece of shit, but he still won a US Open not that long ago.
It just whammy. He just knocks it out of the park.
So
Just dig the long
Maybe
ball.
did he leave because Live Golf's not going to test?
you heard it here first. Dustin Johnson was the highest finisher from Live, and he finished 24th. He had, a decent Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and probably, he had a chance to go low and be in it on Sunday, but a lot, or like many of the other golfers, didn't quite have it on Sunday.
I was surprised at the scores on Sunday. Like, there's a few pretty low scores. Like Matsuyama shot like a 65, and someone else had a couple of different people had 65.
Morikawa shot a 66.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the US Open because I think it puts the greatest golfers in an incredibly difficult environment, and we get to watch a bunch of guys duff chip shots and skull sand shots and lose balls in the rough.
I heard the rough was worse at the RBC Open.
Well, I don't know, man. The balls were disappearing
from the Canadian Open. The rough was like it didn't look that bad. I was really close, so to all the holes. So,
but do you have anything to compare it to, John?
Yeah, so the roughs at the Oakville Executive Golf Course are pretty wild. For those of you that haven't been there,
that's because no one works there.
Yeah, so they're going for a rustic approach, and the Canadian Open just can't hold a candle to that. So,
I mean, I can speak to John's experience at Oakville Executive. He put his ball in the fescue quite a few times.
Yeah, I just learned what a fescue was. So I guess now that we've seen this first sort of showdown between these rival organizations, do you think that the PGA will use this as like cannon fodder to talk about why they're the superior tour?
Well, they just are. Really, you'd have to take a pretty substantial amount of players for LIV to even come close to being as good as the PGA. It took like what? Like, is Dustin the only? How many guys in the top 20 did they poach? Dustin Johnson and who else?
I think DeChambeau's in the top 20.
Sometimes
he may have dropped out.
Ricky Fowler's going over, isn't he?
Yeah, he's been irrelevant for a while though.
Yeah, just the only person that keeps him relevant is Hogo.
The South Africans, I think 3 or 4 South Africans.
Who's there? Like Oosthuizen? He's there, right?
Stazen and Brandon Grace and somebody else.
Is Schwartzel there?
Yeah, Schwartzel. Yeah, he won the first tournament.
Man, see, look at me, just name dropping like nobody's business. So moving forward, do you think that the quality of golfers are going to improve for LIV? Like, do you think that quality is going to improve, or is it kind of just is what it is, and they're just going to keep trying to like pay to have like better golfers show up?
I think LIV has enough money that as long as they continue to invest the way that they are, of course the golf is going to improve, right? They're going to attract golfers from all over the world who maybe never even played on the PGA Tour, and LIV becomes the first option. Especially if you're not North American, you'd be crazy not to consider that.
Yeah. Well, and they're talking about university guys that are currently like in college playing golf, and that it's a little more challenging to get like your tour card or whatever, where like you can just get paid and jump over to LIV right after like finishing whatever they're finishing for school.
Exactly. The players have been complaining about the PGA Tour for years and years and years, and the tour has never really reacted and never really acknowledged that there could be an outside threat. and they're paying the price. You spend years, driving some used car all over the US, going tournament to tournament, scraping together enough money to continue entering tournaments. You finally earn your card, and you're still not guaranteed a payday unless you play well and make cuts and finish high. And think of the number of guys who are trying to make it versus the number of guys who actually do. And then even when you do make it, you're not guaranteed a card year to year. There's no players union. There's no team that you've signed a contract with. It's week to week, year to year. So a rival organization shows up and is willing to dole out big dollars in a completely different model. Yeah, PGA is in trouble long term. Like I said, if LIV or any other association decides to invest this way.
I don't really understand what the PGA guys are complaining about. Happy Gilmore won one open tournament and made enough money to buy his grandmother's house. Like, it's not that difficult a thing to do.
Great point.
That's true, and completely nonfiction. What do we think about this guy? I don't remember his first name, but his last name is Murray, and he just like raged on the golf course that entire last day on Sunday. Snapped a club over his knee, tossed one in the rough. He ended up finishing dead last in the tournament on that final day.
Of the people that made the cut.
Yeah. Is that appropriate golf decorum?
For 22-year-old Andrew, yeah, absolutely. I feel like he's going to get the Happy Gilmore treatment from the PGA Tour. He looked like an idiot.
Is he going to have to do some anger management stuff to show that he can still be on the tour? Do some like quality PR?
Pair him up with Bob Barker.
Yeah, right.
Let Bob Barker straighten him out.
He looked like
Price
a
is
child
wrong,
whose mom wouldn't let him have the cookies that he wants at the grocery store, throwing a tantrum.
Yeah. All right. Well, I thought it was a little funny. Just like it seemed like it was out of like a TV show or a movie for sure. Just couldn't contain himself.
Well, how do you feel when a player throws a tantrum in any other sport that would be comparable?
Yeah, but it's funnier when it's in golf because it's
so
such
out
like
of
a
the norm,
like stoic environment, and then you see one guy absolutely losing his mind.
Well, what about when Kyrgios loses his mind on the umpire or the line judge in a big tennis match? That's comparable, right? Or when Serena loses her mind,
or like John McEnroe and used to blow a gasket.
Yeah,
that's fair. I would say that like they get pretty skewered as well. I know Serena did when she got into it with that line judge at like was like the Australian Open or something like that, or the US Open. It was a blue court. That's why I'm referencing those places. Yeah, that's fair. So like these sports that have typically been for like wealthy participants. So I don't know.
What's the parallel? Like, can you lose your mind in the classroom at work like that because you didn't get your way or because you had a bad lesson?
Yeah, I would just flip desks.
Yeah, right.
We go, excuse me, children, can you exit the room for 5 minutes? And then you close the door and you tape over the window so they can't look in, and you flip everything over. And when you open it back, you go, okay, like we're just going to do some movement now. We're going to we'll do a body break and we're going to set the room back up. So no, absolutely. Like it's not like that's a point where like pro sports and athletic endeavors and sort of any sort of thing that can get televised in a competition, when people sort of lose their cool, we look at it and comment on it. But if that were in a traditional or more common workplace, it would be totally unacceptable. So hopefully you'll learn from it. First time. And maybe we'll find some other ways to express his frustration.
Well said, John. Very measured.
Yeah, that's why I level the playing field.
Taking all the fun out of it.
Hey, before we move on from LIV Golf, I'm really interested your guys' thoughts on the controversy overtaking Saudi money, and the criticism that the guys from the PGA Tour have taken in accepting that quote unquote dirty money.
Yeah, I feel like we've had a couple of like mini conversations off air in like the group chat kind of about this stuff. And like for me, I am comparing it to European soccer right now, in that there's a lot of money being invested and spent on purchasing soccer teams, predominantly in the English Premier League, but it's happening in France as well. And so it's the same idea, right? Like these clubs are spending exorbitant amounts of money and bringing in huge stars, whether they're in their prime or a little past their prime, they're doing that. And no one's really knocking down their doors saying anything to the players, to the organizations doing it. And whether they have a bigger PR machine because it's a huge organization and these are independent golfers that don't have that same level of PR, they don't necessarily have a team around them to sort of comment on these things, that it's being spoken about, that it's American and that Americans feel a particular way about affairs and who should be participating and who shouldn't be, and just interfering in people's business when perhaps they don't always need to be. All of those things could be true, but this isn't the first instance where investors have invested money and it's probably not come from a great place. So the point got made a couple of times by people on TV and in our group of friends about the idea that, well, if we're not going to be overly critical about the government, or we're not going to necessarily hold them to that and talk about that all the time, then how do we expect golfers to do this? Like their experience and their lens is going to be much narrower than some larger groups, organizations, politicians.
Yeah, like there's no point in expecting these guys to live up to a standard that no one else lives up to, right? Like we all drive, right? We use their gas. We never have a problem with that. The government has whatever dealings they have with them, like John was saying. Like, so it's just so stupid. It's just what PGA is clinging on to because they don't have, like you said before, Andrew, like there's been issues that they've been ignoring for a long time. And now instead of accepting their own faults and trying to correct them, they're trying to demonize the guys who are taking the money. And it's just right. But like we were saying, no one else is expected to like just completely ignore like whatever advantages you can get from this country that's giving out the money right now. And as John was saying, like there's how many people are doing like a deep dive into where all the money is coming from with like these huge companies that they interact with, right? And where, so I don't know, it's just an unrealistic expectation to set on some random golfer to care where his money's coming from.
I think you hit the nail on the head with the fact that the PGA has done a great job of controlling the message here, right? They got a little bit out ahead of it, and they were the ones that put it out into the world that, these golfers are doing some sort of evil thing by accepting dirty money. But
they also didn't have a problem with letting them be in these tournaments like 4 months ago.
Well, they would claim that that's different, and that tournament was not, funded by the same fund that's funding the golfers. But I think regardless, there's a whole ton of hypocrisy going on here, like John said, right? The American government does billions and billions of dollars of trade with Saudi Arabia every year. And we're going to hold Dustin Johnson, who we've been making fun of for 15 years for being a crackhead, accountable for taking $125 million, or Phil Mickelson, who's on the record for having a gambling problem, for taking hundreds of millions of dollars. Like that just doesn't compute. We don't even hold our own government accountable. How do you hold a couple of guys who just became generationally wealthier than they even were before accountable? I think it's nuts.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see like if the conversation continues along this path, or is it just going to be scrapped? And then is the new narrative going to be just like quality of play, quality of golfer, quality of game, right? Like, are they going to start doing that? Even broadcasting. I know that like, I've talked about this off camera as well. Just like, how are they going to set up rival broadcasting? And which network is going to do that? And then are there going to be the same criticisms for that broadcaster to then be like, well, like now you are participating in that, because we know that conversation isn't going to happen, right? But if we want to see these golfers and they're offered some sort of incentive to broadcast the golf, then you know that people are going to want to do that.
I actually think LIV kind of fucked up. I don't know what their launch was like in other areas of the world, but the fact that we couldn't even watch the first tournament, and that we, it wasn't even really advertised that the first tournament was happening, I think that was a giant fail.
Yeah. And I wonder if that was the PGA kind of like leveraging some of their relationships too, and be like, hey, like, let's make this a little more difficult.
Yeah, but there's so many other, like, they could be on DAZN, they could be on Amazon,
Totally.
or whatever, right?
And they could be inundating our Instagram feeds with ads for their YouTube channel. They dropped the ball.
They dropped the ball. It depends on what you think their goal is, right? Like, they have WWE events that they don't televise, right? Like, is this like just a toy that they're playing with for a few years, or is this something that they actually intend on making money with?
Yeah,
they wouldn't have gone to the trouble of stealing golfers from the PGA
Why?
if they didn't want people to watch.
The money they spent is literally nothing to them. The guy,
right, but that's the point.
Saudi prince is like trillions of dollars. He doesn't care about $100 million.
Well, the fund that's paying for it is 500 billion, so not quite trillions, but still infinite money as far as I'm concerned.
So, like, is this just something for their amusement?
But that's my point. Is even if it's for their amusement, wouldn't they have made an effort to have people watch it?
Why?
To rub more sand in the eye of the PGA? If you're not stealing viewership, you haven't achieved anything. You're not winning.
Yeah, or maybe like how they view winning is completely different. Because I know like it's not exactly the same, but PSG, like Paris Saint-Germain, they are being heavily criticized because when they release their numbers, they operate in the red.
Which is fucking crazy.
Right? But they just finished signing arguably the biggest star in soccer, Kylian Mbappe. They've re-signed him until 2025 for like some ridiculous amount of money. And now other teams, in particular, it's Barcelona, I think, are the ones that are really, because they're in financial straits right now because they've sold the farm for so long. I'm saying, like, how are you allowing this to take place when they say they're operating the red, but then they're just throwing money at the star to stay?
But in those cases, wouldn't you argue, though, that the owner is passionate about winning and putting the best team on the field, and money be damned, I'm just going to buy the best players? Right? If LIV Golf is trying to win, then don't you think you need people to watch the tournament?
Well, they're spending their money on all these players first. Maybe they are just watching it for themselves. Like,
that's what I'm saying. Like,
right?
You're assuming that
like
they give a shit.
They're like, you know what? We want a golf tour where like it's closer to us. We don't have to watch on some bogus time change. So we're just gonna make this happen for us. So
the only thing is that like there's a bunch of tournaments like in the States and in like Europe and stuff. Like, it's not like they're playing all in Saudi Arabia, right?
I mean,
yeah. Well, they're playing in the first one was in London, right? So
I think their goal is to unseat the PGA as the de facto #1 place to go play golf and watch golf. And I think they shit the bed on launching their new product by not making it available to as many human beings on the face of the earth as possible.
Yeah, I liken it to the idea that there's a 2-for-1 special in Miami, and you think that you can just get both of the drinks and take care of them, and you later turn out that like you should have only bought one anyways, but it doesn't matter because you have so much money, you could just keep doing 2-for-1s.
You won that race, John.
Yeah, I definitely won that race. So interesting to see what's going to happen here. Based on that first event and like watching people have varying levels of success, and then they come over in the US Open and kind of just fall on their face. Tough start out of the gate, I think, for LIV Golf. But if
Yeah,
there's
but I
just
also don't think there's a ton of people in LIV. Like Andrew, you know better, but I don't think there's like I don't think the roster is made up of a ton of people who had legitimate aspirations of winning the US Open. Like maybe on their best day, shit happens, but like other than Dustin Johnson and maybe a couple of Oosthuizen or something like that, I don't think there was a ton of guys who legitimately thought they were contending for the title.
Yeah, no, that's 100% true. I mean, they stole some big names, but they didn't really steal viable competitors for the US Open Championship.
right on. All right, well, let's switch gears here now, and I'll start with you, Andrew. So tell us about these cool fan traditions. There's the one that you've referenced here. So why don't we start there?
Yeah, so I only recently learned about this one, but they've started highlighting it now that Colorado's in the finals. In the third period of every Avalanche game, the entire arena sings every word to All the Small Things in unison. And even watching on TV or YouTube, it gives me the shivers and I love it.
So why did they settle on All the Small Things?
It was a tradition that I think, my understanding is that it started by accident. The in-game music guy was trying to come up with ways of engaging the fans and played All the Small Things in a third period at some point, and the music stopped and the fans kept singing, and it just grew from there into, and I mean, aren't all the best traditions grown out of spontaneity like that? But if you haven't heard it, I highly recommend you look it up on YouTube because it is awesome.
Right on. Do you have any cool traditions that you've seen that you're like, yeah, that's legit?
Some MLB teams, namely the Cubs, they do like a cup snake. So they like get the like a whole section to stack as many cups as possible to make this like humongous fucking snake of cups. It's pretty neat.
Right on. Yeah. I know that when the Chargers were in San Diego, that they had their song San Diego Superchargers.
Nobody cares.
And hey man.
Did it go Oski wee wee Oski wawa?
No, that's awful. That's a bad one too. And it was like almost disco themed, and everybody else hates it, but like they sang it to annoy people. And I thought that was pretty funny. That's also a pretty on brand for me as a person to do something that's just highly
I
annoying.
thought that's what Colorado was doing too.
Yeah, maybe they are. Maybe they just all want to say na 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 over and over. And then when I saw that you mentioned them singing All the Small Things, I recently ran across a clip, and I don't love Liverpool. I'm an Arsenal supporter, but I thought it was cool that they play One Kiss by Calvin Harris and Dua Lipa, and they sing One Kiss. And like, it's just funny because it doesn't really fit a sporting event really, but like they all like all kinds of people, like there's some like really like old looking dudes singing One Kiss by Dua Lipa. Like you never think that they would have crossed paths with this song, and they know all the words, fully belting it all around each other, like young guys, old guys, kids, women, like whomever, and they're all belting it out. And I thought like that's sort of like what you're saying with All the Small Things. Pretty cool that like the music can go away and then they know all the words to the song.
Yeah, I don't really like the song, but it was cool when I heard it the other day.
Right.
Like,
So
Yeah,
it wasn't like the timing was good too. Like it wasn't like there was like different sections where like it wasn't like it didn't sound like 80,000 people trying to sing the same song. It sounded like pretty like the
In
timing
sync.
was pretty close. Yeah.
so it's cool when a team has something like that, and then it carries on for a while too, right? So is it just going to be like a fad thing, or will it just be built in? Because sometimes teams have traditions and like they're okay. Like TFC has one when like the particular times come on. I think it's like the 46th minute or something like that. And they always sing this song and they say Danny Dicchio because he was like the first star of Toronto FC. And like now that we're so far deep, like down the existence of Toronto FC, like I'm like, do we still need to be doing this?
Yeah, when you really look at like the history of TFC, where does Danny Dichio rank on the best players list?
Right. And
Yeah,
so
but it's one of those cool things, right? Like John, at some point you'll take one of your daughters and they'll ask you who Danny Dichio is, and you'll explain it, and then
You
they'll
see,
become part of the tradition.
When teams expand, when leagues expand, sometimes teams really, really suck when they start. So you cling on to any small thing you can. So maybe you have a Canadian on the team who isn't the worst player in the league, or maybe you have some other guy who scores a couple goals.
yeah, it sounds like me just being very technical in explanation. Quick tangential story here. Evelyn asked why she's not allowed to drink Coca-Cola. And I told her that, well, it's got a ton of sugar and it also contains caffeine. And she's like, what's caffeine? So then I went down the path of explaining that caffeine is a stimulant, and that when you ingest a stimulant, that it provides like a particular reaction, and it's not great for kids to be ingesting caffeine. And Lindsay's just howling. She's like, I can't believe you wasted all of our time doing this to our poor 5-year-old daughter.
You already forgot.
Yeah. So that's definitely how it would go if I had to explain Danny Dichio, for sure. Like how you started, like, well, with expansion drafts, like, yeah, I would definitely do that. So pretty good there.
Some other cool fan traditions. I was at a Chicago Blackhawks game in the playoffs, and I did not know about this tradition until I was in the arena. The whole arena sings the national anthem at the top of their lungs. And, you know, even being Canadian, it gives you shivers down your spine. There's Sweet Caroline at a Red Sox game.
Terrible.
There's
That's
Take
the
Me Out to the
worst.
Ball game at the Cubs game, right? They always get a celebrity to sing Take Me Out to the Ball game. I don't know, these cool
Let's
fan
play
traditions.
ball.
How many times in your life are you in a place with 20,000, 40,000, however many people who might vote Democrat, might vote Republican, might, you know, just have completely differing opinions on so many things, but be united for that moment in time in that one tradition, or, you know, in the team score? That's what makes sports amazing. That's why we watch it. That's why we love it, is because it brings us together. And then, you know, as soon as the game's over, we go back to hating each other. But I just love
like
those
that
little
one
things.
game where that Rangers fan destroys the Lightning fan in the lobby of the
That's
Madison
right.
Seeing
Square
people
Garden.
together.
Just just slapped him, right? No warning. Just turn around.
Well, you
and
see, the
slapped
game
him.
is over, and one guy is a Trumper, and the other guy is a Democrat. So you socked him right in the mouth.
Yeah. He's like, so great game, right? And then that's all. he
Bam!
said.
Right in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Sweet Cara, boom.
Yeah. Night. So talking about people getting knocked out and throwing punches, we'll follow up from last week. We were talking about Vince McMahon and his philandering ways with the paralegal, and paid $3 million to hush up this affair and kind of try to make it go away. So as the investigation's going on, he said he's going to fully cooperate, but to like avoid distraction, he's going to step away from his role. And so as he's now formally stepped down as the CEO, his daughter, Stephanie McMahon, is going to be the interim CEO and the interim chairperson, which doesn't sound so out of place because it's a family business, except that she's recently stepped down from her role as VP of the creative programming. So like she was one of the people that was sort of like steering the ship on like the storylines, who's getting the big push as a wrestler, who's maybe moving to the mid card, all those sorts of things. And so she stepped away to say that she's looking to be more family oriented, focus on her family, spend time with her kids. I believe she has 2 kids. And if you didn't know, she's married to Triple H, the very popular wrestler, perhaps the most popular because he married the boss's daughter. We got a huge push after that happened. But interesting that she's now what?
Nepotism.
Yeah, there's a little bit of nepotism perhaps there.
What
Just
do you
a little
mean by
bit.
that? Didn't he earn it by winning his matches?
He actually earned it because his character was that he was blue-blooded coming from a rich, wealthy family. And so he brought his own
Just
affluence
the kind
and
of
wealth,
people we all want to see succeed.
right? He brought his own wealth, affluence, and status to the WWE, and he classed up the joint. So that's really why he is as successful as he is.
The real reason why is because they wanted John Cena to be the face, but you can't see him.
Yeah.
So it had to be Triple H.
I'm still very confused. Don't they all just earn their way by winning their matches and being excellent wrestlers?
Obviously. And the pathway to the conclusion is always riveting, and done so with the smallest of trunks. And so the funny part here, I guess, or like the interesting part about this is that because she recently stepped away, to then be thrust back into this role is very telling about sort of, I think, where this is going and how they're going to look to keep power in the family, because he has a controlling stake, right? Even though the board's probably going to turn on this situation and look to appoint someone who's not in the McMahon family, looking to sort of like maintain some sort of control as this transition happens.
So they have a majority or control, like
they have majority stake, and so they have a board.
I know, but they have like 51%.
I believe so. Like I think it's 55 actually, but they have enough. So it'd be interesting to see sort of like how this shakes out, because while like on the surface they're not really going to be making decisions or having the sort of like visibility that they've had in the past, basically throughout the organization's existence, how this will shake out. And Linda McMahon was recruited for some committees for Trump, like during his presidential campaign. And so she's been eerily quiet about all of this. So whether that's intentional or not, I'm curious to know sort of like what her approach will be here, dealing with this latest controversy.
It's a lot of unknown. I don't really know what else to.
Isn't the WWE publicly traded?
Yeah, that's what. But they have a, like he was saying, they have a majority stake in the company.
Yeah, but he owns public stock, so I imagine there's rules around.
Yeah, but your vote is like the power of your vote is based on how much of the stock you own.
Yes, that's true. But there's also rules about who can be the CEO of a publicly traded company.
Yeah, I don't know.
So
wouldn't that be independently like bylawed by depending on every company? It's not like a universal rule. Really, every company is gonna have its own like setup, and bylaws and shit like that.
Right, but there are rules that apply to publicly traded companies that don't apply to private.
Yeah, okay, I don't know what I'm talking about.
So regardless, it'd be interesting to see sort of like how far they disappear into the depths of the organization, because for so long, Vince McMahon in particular, and the McMahon family in general, have been highly visible throughout the organization's existence. Like I said, they show up quite often. They have written themselves into their storylines that they're making these big sweeping decisions, that they're either favoring or screwing wrestlers over in their storylines. So I'm curious to know, like, if we're just not going to see that anymore. And like, they have pretty big characters. Like they get huge pops when they show up. So
especially Stephanie.
Yeah. So it'd be interesting to see like if they just completely erase that, because that's also a thing that the WWE does when things go sideways, like they did with Hulk Hogan. They removed all of his merch. Like obviously the huge controversy around the murder and suicide of Chris Benoit, right? He's basically scrubbed from WWE.
But not before they did a tribute of him.
Like that Dark Side of the Ring episode that they oh man, that's really messed up.
Didn't that Hulk Hogan stuff end up being like not even true?
Like he ended up suing Gawker, who released the story, and he got paid out. So whether it was like true or like how true it was, like he wasn't necessarily a great person. It was just like they made stuff up, I think, on top, or they couldn't substantiate what they said. And so then he was paid out like $5 million or something like that. But my point was that the WWE quite often looks to remove things that they view as controversial or like damaging to the brand. So can they self-censor?
I mean, as you guys know, I'm not a wrestling expert, but the WWE as a business has made billions of dollars for a long time. They know what the fuck they're doing. Every decision they've made has been a measured decision, and I'm sure a couple of them they've gotten wrong, but if there's controversy that people are talking about, that's probably on purpose and it's probably generating revenue.
So we'll see how this continues to unfold. Maybe it'll be written to a storyline, because
You heard it here first. Dana White, next CEO of WWE.
See, and I don't think he'd ever go over there.
UFC and the WWE will merge.
Call it
And it'll just come out that the UFC has been fixed all along.
Yeah, that would be
I was thinking just
devastating.
every other match will be fake or real, but
UFC
they won't
That's
tell
the best.
they won't tell the fans.
UFC will just turn into a choose your own adventure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Judge
So,
really matter now.
yeah, just if that like stuff starts showing up in mixed martial arts, it'd be pretty brutal.
But you
Oh,
love
my.
both. Wouldn't this be
Absolutely
the absolute
not.
pinnacle?
No, you can't mix the two. You can like two things and they be a little related, but you can't have the elements of the WWE that people heavily criticize become the elements of the UFC. That would be really sad.
See Conor McGregor make his first UFC or WWE appearance in like a month and a half.
No, well, people are already sort of like doing that stuff, whether it's in the WWE or not. There is a rival organization called the AEW, and there are a bunch of MMA fighters that fight in the American Top Team gym that have ended up in a storyline with Chris Jericho and some other like notable wrestlers in that organization. So there is this bleeding. Like Jorge Masvidal has been on that show, right? And he's still a very prominent fighter, at least in name. Whether he's a true contender at this point is another story, but very notable, very popular UFC fighter, and sort of again blurring the lines. But I could spend tons of time in wrestling, and I know that's perhaps not the best for everyone else here. So we'll carry on. So we got this greatest sports moment ever. And are we saying that Johnny Mack hitting a home run on Father's Day is the greatest sports moment ever?
I didn't put it in there.
Because if this is the case, I strongly disagree with this statement.
Listen, obviously your home team's winning, the Jose Bautista bat flip. We could come up with lists of great successes in sports that are the traditional best moments in sports ever. But given that it was Father's Day yesterday, I think of this every year. John McDonald, who I think hit 10 home runs in his entire career, was known for his defense, even though it by the stats wasn't actually that good. He just made it look hard. Couldn't hit.
That's what my wife does. She makes it look hard.
Tiny hands.
Yeah, she does that.
He lost his father a couple days before Father's Day, and then on Father's Day was in the lineup and hit a home run, was bawling his eyes out, rounding the bases. And I just will never forget that moment and think, those are the moments where you wonder what the hell carried that ball over the wall.
Didn't you first say there's no crying in baseball?
Of course, that was always the first reaction.
What makes that better than like Brett Favre throwing for like 500 yards the day his dad died?
I mean, I didn't think of it.
It was fun.
It was on Father's Day, I suppose. That the Brett Favre game is also a fantastic sports moment. Agreed. I guess it's less of a moment and more of a whole game, I guess. But yeah, that's a great one.
So are you basically just talking about like things that make you emotional in sports?
Yeah, I mean isn't that why we all love sports?
And it's just a huge softie. He wants to put it out there. He wants everyone to know how much he cries.
So I guess what you're saying is like a moment where tied to like a particular event, and like that's why it's great.
I think just an unlikely moment that evokes emotion.
Yeah, there's an element of like you said, John McDonald maybe hit like 7 home runs his whole career. So the fact that it happened on that day, right after his dad died, it's a eerie coincidence that all happened at the same time. I don't know. I don't even have another other than like the Brett Favre game. I don't.
There's like the Isaiah Thomas when his sister died for the Boston Celtics, and he came out and he played and he had a out of world performance. Was it like wide receiver? They were showing a couple, like they did like one of those, like, you just really play up on people's emotions and you do like a top 10 like tribute to recently deceased family member countdown, right? Like it's so messed up when you think about like, hey, let's put together this reel.
It's also so weirdly specifically.
Well, that was me just naming it, but you know what I mean? Like that's basically what the countdown was.
Yeah.
And they'd shown a bunch of these and I'm like, okay, like, yeah, definitely you get the feels when that happens. So yeah, because like I saw the greatest sports moment ever. Like I was like, oh, like 28-3. Like that was pretty ridiculous.
I thought the greatest ever.
But like it's a ridiculous thing to have watched, thinking like in
Probably
that
the best
moment,
comeback ever.
right? Like watching that being like, oh, this game's over. And then it wasn't. Or like again, like I think for me, Kawhi's buzzer beater, like that is burned in my brain.
Yeah.
Burned. And like that's like hometown bias for sure. But that was definitely something.
Yeah, Joe Carter home run.
Yeah.
Bautista
Sure.
bat flip. Doug Gilmore wraparound.
You say reach around?
He did a couple of those too.
All
Has
right.
it?
Nothing like wraparound in the Western Conference Finals to get the blood going.
It was not the Western Conference Finals. It was only the second round.
Hey, do you
And it
remember
was-
when we
and
saw
it was
him at the
game one.
casino?
Hmm?
Do you remember when we saw him at the casino?
I don't remember seeing Doug Gilmore at the casino.
Was I not with you?
I don't think so.
Who was I with? I might have a gambling
sorry,
problem. Anyways, I saw him at the casino and he was playing at a roulette table by himself.
What are you implying?
I think that he doesn't like crowds.
So I sat down with Doug Gilmore and I played roulette by myself.
No, I couldn't afford his table.
I think John's implying some Phil Mickelson vibes.
But yeah, so okay, so I see where you're going there. I'm trying, I can't think of other ones like that. The Brett Favre one is the one that sticks out of my brain, and like maybe it's because it was like talked about so much, and then it's Brett Favre who just threw bombs the whole night. So
The only other things like similar to the John McDonald one is like that one that I said, and like the personal one that we all like experienced this year, which is like a fan one, not on the field, but like
right.
How about the Josh Hamilton home run derby after making his comeback? That was kind of, his high moment in his career.
that's poor wording, Andrew. Come on, you're better than
That was a little,
that.
it was a little on the nose.
In the nose, if you will.
Yeah. So yeah, okay. So all right, yeah, I see what you're going for. So like humanizing the sport a little bit there. So I
Andrew just wanted to create a situation where he could take a dig at Johnny Mack, saying he's not really as good a defensive player as we all thought.
I also can confirm that he had 28 career home runs, not 7 or 10.
Well, then it's like, then who even cares?
yeah, not as impressive now. So can we highlight the significance of Eric Lindros's trade, the 30-year anniversary of this, and why this is a big deal?
Again, you're gonna have to ask Andrew.
Throw this to you.
All right.
Tell us why this is a big deal. Why is this a big deal to you?
Okay, so it's the 30-year anniversary of the Eric Lindros trade. And I mean, right from the start, anybody who refuses to get drafted by a team in any sport, I automatically just hate you. Like, you've achieved the dream of so many people on earth, and you're arrogant enough to say, yeah, but I don't want to play for the team that has the first pick. I hate that. And then the Nordiques pull off one of the biggest steals of all time in that trade. Start by saying, forget who's even in the trade. The Nordiques win the trade because Colorado wins the Cup twice, and the Flyers don't ever.
Yeah, but they won because of who they got.
But even if you ignore the names and the points and the careers, Quebec/Colorado wins the trade. And then when you start looking at the names, it's mind-boggling. Peter Forsberg alone had
A better career.
arguably a better career than Eric Lindros.
Similarly cut short.
Yes. But he got it done, especially in the playoffs. And then, add to the list Steve Duchesne, Ron Hextall, Mike Ricci, Chris Simon, and 2 first-round picks. And it's not even close. It's just, it's mind-boggling.
Not even paying attention. Those 2 first-round picks, they didn't turn out to be nobody either. That was Chris Drury and Milan Hayduk.
No, I don't think that's right. One of them was Jocelyn Thibault.
I don't think so.
Yeah, Jocelyn Thibault was one of them, who ended up getting traded to the Habs for guess who?
Patrick Waugh.
Patrick Waugh and Mike Keane. And then the other one was used in the trade to the Leafs for Wendell. So Colorado traded away Matt Sundin in that first-round pick and got Wendell Clark.
Oh, they made those picks. They made a huge deal about Hayduk and Drury being part of that trade for like a decade after.
I mean, maybe they were like part of the trade tree, but they weren't in the Lindros trade. Right? Tanguay and Hayduk didn't come along until much later.
Alex Tanguay. Haven't heard that name in a long time.
Maybe, I don't know.
But yeah, I mean, the trade shaped both of the franchises for essentially the next 2 decades, and Colorado had an incredible amount of success, and Philadelphia made the Eastern Conference Finals a couple times. And then Lindros got hit by Scott Stevens, and the rest is history.
Yeah, just too many concussions.
Like you shouldn't base your whole strategy around building around one player when you're a team of 30 people.
I mean, maybe you can build around one player, but maybe don't trade all your other players to get them.
Yep, I just remember
Robert Reichel, so it's pretty good.
Yeah,
I just remember his brother Brett being the host of the NHL like kids show, like how they had
after he got
inside the NBA or whatever with Ahmad Rashad, which was like a bomb sports TV show. They tried to do that for hockey, and they did it with Brett Lindros. It was not a bomb TV show.
It's kind of like what they're doing now.
There's no
with
bueno.
TNT.
Yeah,
taking a good basketball product and trying to make it a good hockey product.
It's missing the mark. Is that what I'm hearing? Is it missing the mark?
I don't watch it.
So that's how we know, because you're not watching it. So yeah, have we reached that time?
I don't know, Andrew. Is there anything else you want to say about Eric Lindros? How much you hate him? Even though the Leafs had since the day he entered the league, the Leafs tried to get him, and they didn't get him until he had like CTE and he was 35
and a broken wrist. In fairness, in retirement, he's done a lot of community work in London, Ontario, and I think he funded like an entire hospital or an entire.
Yeah, your hatred for him is unfounded. That's very clear.
I think anyone who tries to control their own destiny, like Eli Manning or Eric Lindros is.
I was just about to ask
Andrew
you
just
about Eli
loves
Manning.
supporting the people in power. It's like, yeah, who cares if the NHL has a monopoly and they completely control every aspect of these guys' lives when they enter the league? He should just shut up and take it because he gets to play hockey for a living.
I mean, I'm not really thinking of the NHL. I'm thinking of the poor Quebec Nordiques who moved to Colorado a couple of years later because
Yeah,
they couldn't even draft the guys they wanted to draft.
Well, but there's many other underlying issues to that than Eric Lindros. And
Sure.
they also lost the Expos
Well,
like a few years
Lindros
later,
didn't change the system, did he? And neither did Eli.
No.
So
But
mission not accomplished.
No, mission accomplished because they played their card and they got what they wanted out of it.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like other athletes now that
Steve Francis.
Steve Francis, yeah, that one was sticking out for me. Yeah, I don't
I mean,
know.
it happened in baseball all the time in the past, right?
Yeah, well, that was a completely different system, though.
There's been a lot more like I've played for a little while and now I'm forcing my way out. That seems to be a more common trend.
Damon.
Yeah, as of late. So, well, here we go. Happy anniversary, Eric Lindros trade. Happy 30 years.
The best part is like Andrew hates him so much, and he's like, "Look, he didn't even make the Stanley Cup Finals, but he dominated
He did
the
once.
Leafs every time."
He
Did
did.
he?
He did make the finals once.
No, and every time that the Flyers played the Leafs and the Lindros was on the team, the Flyers won.
There you go. He's like Aaron Rodgers with the Chicago Bears. I own you. All right. So have we got to that time?
Sure.
All right. So let's get to these grievances. We'll go to special guest.
New guy.
You're up first. Tell us about this grievance you got here.
Right. I've lived in my house for 6.5 years, and I think I've officially become the old angry guy who shakes his fist at cars. But I walk the dogs on a very regular basis. It's my excuse to leave the house because I've worked from home for the last 2 years. Even before that, I
say you hate your wife, but go on.
even absolutely not. Even before that, I walked Barney very often. That we didn't have a fenced-in backyard, so that was his exercise and his mechanism for doing his business. And we live on a pretty quiet street. I think it's a 50 zone, and there's 2 schools on our relatively short street, a high school and an elementary school. And yet cars.
Know that.
Pardon?
No, nothing. Go ahead.
He made
there's
a
a-
joke that didn't land.
No.
There's a stop sign 3 houses down from us, and it's also on the other side of the stop sign is one of the schools. So you'd think if you're ever going to stop at a stop sign, that's the one to stop at. And there are cars at 3 o'clock in the afternoon who don't even slow down at that stop sign. There are kids walking home from school. There's people walking their dogs. I've had the dogs get out before and just run across the street. It just boggles my mind that you could be that reckless in such a quiet residential area. Is it really worth it to have saved yourself those 12 seconds to not stop at the stop sign?
Hey man, they live their lives a quarter mile at a time, right? And just fast and furious. Toretto.
It grinds my goddamn gears.
Yeah, well, like I said, you know what I mean? Some people just they live a quarter mile at a time and they're racing for those pink slips and they got to get to the end of the road, man.
There are moments where I'll have a bag in my hand that I have just used to pick up the dog's business, and a car will blow through the stop sign, and there's that split moment, that moment in time where I fantasize about just hitting their windshield with a bag of dog shit.
Yeah,
it would be so satisfying.
So I haven't flung poo at anyone, but there was this car that would fly up my court into this driveway on like the cul-de-sac part of the court, and obviously the girls are out playing, the neighborhood girls are out playing, and we're like yelling at the girls to get to the side because this guy's whipping up the court. And so one of the neighbors had already said, hey, like kids are playing, man, when you go drive the street, make sure that you're driving slow. He says, yeah, I'm sorry, no problem. He actually didn't listen to anything they said. So I finally was like, enough is enough. And I had a basketball in my hand. So when this car came flying up my street, I whipped it at the Jeep.
Wow.
That the Jeep slammed its brakes, and then the ball went by, and then they drove very slowly into the driveway. And then he got out of the car, and I'm like, you need to drive slower. And then he looked at me, and he's like, okay. And I'm like, so drive slower. And then he looked at me, and I'm like, have a great night. And then he went into his house.
I love John. John is my fucking hero.
And so it wasn't someone who lived there. I think he was either like a friend of one of the kids that lived there, or was perhaps the partner of one of the kids that lived there. But he didn't come around for a while. And then
was the driver like a younger driver?
I would say he was in his 20s.
Okay.
So not like a teen driver, but like definitely like, I think back to myself at those times, and like, was I always the most aware? No, but like I needed someone to call me out on it. And so like now I'm that person who's doing the calling out.
I distinctly remember you passing me on a residential street while I stopped at a stop sign.
I may or may not have lived my life a quarter mile at a time. I've done some growth. But yeah, so I definitely understand that. I've got a stop sign in my neighborhood that is routinely blown through. And like now I'm like, I don't want to create fear in Evelyn about it, but like I'm also very like, when you get to this part of the sidewalk, you have to stop. Like there's no like second guessing. There's no like, I'm too big to listen to you, Dad. Like this is a hard, fast rule. And if you don't do it, then we're turning around and going home, because I've watched so many cars blow through a stop sign. I don't know what it's like for you in your neighborhood, Dave, but
the street's fucked. People go down like 80 down the street.
yeah, it's insane.
Like,
yeah, your street is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's like my number one fear living here. Is like when the kids are small and they go out, because like I think I might have brought this up in the pod before, but like the backyard, there's times where it's uninhabitable. Like it's a sopping mess. So you have to play, if they want to be outside, they got to be in the front. So they're going up and down the sidewalk, and it takes like a split second. And like, you don't want to be the helicopter parent that's like running down the sidewalk, like as your 5-year-old or whatever is like doing whatever, because he's just going up and down, but maybe his ball rolls away and he doesn't think, hey, I should stop. And right.
Yeah.
Like, so yeah.
Yep.
There was like one time where like a friend of ours, he actually like stepped his wife like crossed the street or something it was like during COVID, right? So their son is bigger than ours. They're the same age, but he's much bigger than Logan. So I think they were bringing us some clothes or something. And so she crossed the street to like drop it on the sidewalk and then go back. But like shortly after she crossed the street the first time, this fucking car was like racing down the street, and he like stepped in front of it and fucking yelled at this fucking kid. It was something I wish I had done. There's been many times where like I have the quick release flip flops, right? I just want to fucking whip it at cars, but I'm always concerned with like, how far are you willing to take this? Because you start throwing things at people, they get out of the car, you got to make a decision. Like, are you ready to go to jail?
I mean, that's exactly why I have only fantasized about throwing bags of shit at people's cars.
Not everyone can pick on kids like John, but like sometimes there's adults driving down the street and you have to make a decision. Like, am I going to fight a person and go to jail today? Or am I just going to like be angry and hate myself?
Well, and unlike you, I don't have the confidence that I would win the fight and go to jail. I'd be the one going to the hospital.
Yeah. Well, to paint a broader picture, there were many people out that day.
Oh, so you had backup too.
So I had backup, and I was not concerned for my.
John was hiding behind his daughters, telling them to hold him back.
Yeah, definitely.
Pointing at her. Evelyn did it. I swear to God.
Yeah. What a clumsy kid.
How can you let your ball roll in front of a car like that? God.
All right. So good. Grievance.
So sorry, sir.
Yeah. Good grievance. Good grievance. I'll go next. So I went to a funeral on Saturday, and that whole situation's sad. It was a child, but had extenuating health concerns, like lifespan was, she had already exceeded her lifespan, body deteriorated. So it was kind of like, not that it was expected, but it was just kind of like known that like at some point this child was never going to be an adult. And so went to the funeral, highly emotional. And all the funerals that I've been to, like you have the ceremony at like a funeral home or a church, and then like immediate family, or if you've been invited to go to the cemetery or the place of rest, you go. And then not everyone goes to the burial ground. Like this was a very large funeral, large.
Usually it's the other way around for the ones I've been to. It's like the ceremony, everything's at the burial ground, and then you go back for stuff after.
Oh, really? No, all the ones I've been to, like I've been to so many, like I've not been to a whole lot, but every other one I've had, there's been like at a church or a funeral home, and then the body gets interred.
Yeah, that's
Or-
my experience as well.
And so I
No, when you
expected,
came to my grandparents' funeral, they went to where they were buried, and then we went back to the United Church after.
anyways, let's keep this moving. Just death already freaks me out. So all the things are done at the church, and like I went, my sister drove me and my mom drove separately because she was basically, this is a family friends, and so like their mom and my mom have been like friends basically as long as my mom's been in the country. They have a daughter that's very close, like basically best friends with my sister. And so that's the context here. My sister drove me to the funeral. My mom drove on her own because she was helping out with the family. And so it gets all wrapped up at the church, and I'm like, okay, like my sister's going to be ready to like offer any more like condolences, like check in with her friend, and then say see you later. And they're like, no, we're all going to the burial grounds now. And so like that part was really bizarre, because like they're trying to like be respectful because it's in a cemetery, but like people are standing on graves, people are leaning on headstones. I'm like dying inside. I'm like, oh my God, like we're all gonna get haunted. Like, please just like honor the dead that's already here. Like, so that's happening. And then I'm like, okay, so like this is all complete. The casket has been lowered. And then my sister's like, oh, they're doing like a reception. Okay, I'm like, I'm aware that receptions exist. We go, it's being held in a nightclub. So that was a little weird that the venue is a nightclub, not the right. So like it's like 4:00. And I'm like, okay, like I'm in a nightclub now. And like they have signs up for their VIP later that night, like with the names of the people attending. There's like a whole balloon arch and stuff set up for the nightclub. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so weird that like they have a whole night prepared, and these people that are going to attend the club have no idea that there was a funeral reception leading up to it. And like, so I'm like working through all of that, and then music starts being played, and I'm like, okay, like that's a nice touch. It's like some like soft soca calypso music, like about like remembering the good times, and like it fits the theme, right, like of a funeral. And then like as things continue, like I see bottles show up on the bar, like full bottles of booze, like beers chilled, and like people are pouring themselves drinks now. And I'm like, what is this becoming? Because it wasn't what it was promoted as. And like that's fine, I get like people celebrate and acknowledge death in different ways. And then the DJ's music starts changing, and it just keeps getting a little more provocative and a little more like celebratory, and like a little more like I'm at Caravana or like at like a family function for good times instead of a funeral. And like the DJ, I looked over and it's just like feeling himself. And that's when that's where my grievous stems from. Is like, this DJ thinks he threw down like the greatest set of his DJing career, and it was a funeral reception. And I'm like, oh my gosh, is it just me? And then luckily my sister came because she was hanging out watching her friends, like other two kids, while she could eat and like do the like walking around and all that kind of stuff that happens at weird events. And she came over and she's like, is this DJ honestly playing this music right now? And I'm like, oh, thank God, at least my sister feels this way. But yeah, it's just like that whole setup is my grievance. I was just like super weird. The DJ was like really into himself. So
Did the family feel the same way?
Honestly, I think they're in shock, man. Like I know, like I see them at least once a year, the couple and their kids, because obviously when my sister has the boys' birthdays, they're there. So like I know both of them, and the daughter of the family, like Rosanna's friend, like I've watched her grow up. Like we've been in each other's lives for as long as I can remember. And like when they were walking around or they were talking to people, like there was just like mist over their eyes, like they were on autopilot, right? And like 100%, right? It's just I don't know if they really could process everything that was going on.
But they weren't dancing and vibing.
No, but like there were pictures being taken with like a big camera, and like the poses weren't like, there was like, we're getting like family photos done.
I guess I ask because, you know, the different people, different cultures celebrate life in different ways. I just wondered, you know, is this as abnormal as that would seem to you and I wondered if it was what they wanted.
Yeah. And like, so I've been to some other like West Indian Guyanese funerals, and that's not been how it is. And again, there isn't like one like typical response. It's just like watching the other people, you could kind of see them trying to work through what was also going on as well.
You weren't the only one who was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
As absurd as they were, they may have been like forcing themselves to celebrate like the time that they had, right? Because I don't know what the like the expectancy was for how long this kid was going to live, but say they, how old is it? You know how old?
10.
He was 10, so maybe he was.
Yeah, she was 10.
Maybe like they thought they're only going to get to 5, right? And they're like, well, we got 5 extra years. So instead of like as upset as we obviously are, because nobody wants, obviously, like nobody, everyone's going to be upset at that. Celebrate the extra 5 years instead of the
and like years, right? that's not what I was like.
No, I'm saying, but maybe they set it up. Maybe they set that event up that way, and like they thought they wanted it to be this like up, like start with the like remembering the good time stuff, and then become this like uplifting.
Yeah, I did not get that vibe watching the couple.
No? Well, it may not have landed, right? Like they may have thought thought they were going to react one way, and it just didn't work out that way.
Yeah, and it was that. I think if I looked around and saw me being like the way that I was and not getting some like visual confirmation, then I'd be like, okay, like this is what the setup was, and everybody else was on board, and like this is what everybody else knows and expects. But to watch like people sort of like wade through it all, I was like, okay, so this isn't necessarily what people were prepared for when they arrived for this. But yeah, so mostly it was the DJ. Just watching the DJ like walked in with their suitcases and like their cases with the speaker and their deck, and they got all set up. And at first there wasn't a whole lot of like movement, and like, and then as it continued, like hands started moving, body started moving, like was like looking at the screen for like syncing. It was like, and it's like, oh my God, like maybe turn this off for right now. But that's my grievance. Dave?
It's getting to the point of the season where my patience is running thin.
How many games?
So this was game 13 was tonight.
Oh wow, okay. At least you made it double digits. All right, you're good.
This is Logan's baseball season.
Yeah. So
he likes it, he says.
Who's that?
You say you like it.
I do like it.
Mm-hmm. But tell us more about your grievance about this.
But it's getting to the point where like, so there's 2 things are happening. A is that the kids are becoming like, they're becoming friends, right? So which is obviously what you want, but they're on the bench not giving a fuck about what's going on in the game, right? So like when we're hitting, there's a couple guys on base, there's a guy hitting, and there's like 9 guys on the dugout fucking around, and I constantly having to tell them to pay attention. And just like, we'll practice something. I thought I was so like, after Sunday's practice, I was like so happy. I thought we did this. We were running through some drills, and they did it with like such little of my like intervention that I was like, man, I actually like taught them something. And then the game happened, and I taught them nothing. I taught them absolutely nothing. They don't remember a fucking thing when it comes down to it. And yeah, just and like I'm trying to help some of these pitchers, and I'm like, no, you got to do it this way, and they're like, they just do it the exact same way. Like, no, you got to like, you're opening your hips too early, and then you're like, when you do that, you're taking all the power out of your legs, and you're just throwing with all of your arm and none of your body. And like, oh, okay, and they just continue to do it like they don't even do it right the one time. They just continue doing it the way they were doing it. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like, this is just literally wasting my breath.
That's when you ask them to go take a couple swings in the batter's box and you bean them.
Did I talk about that on?
Yes, now you just unintentionally bean some kid.
Me hitting kids with a baseball has become like a running joke. We were doing
sounds hilarious.
It is. It really is. So I was working with kids who wanted to like start, like who wanted to catch, like play catcher, and we were working on throwing the ball to second base on a steal attempt. So I didn't make them like gear up or anything, because I was just like throwing them the ball. But I have a problem where I can't really throw accurately when I'm throwing at their speed. So I unintentionally like ramp it up a little bit so that I'm not throwing it to the backstop every time. So I guess and I even asked the kid after, I was was I throwing too hard? And he was like, yeah, you were throwing too hard. I was like, okay, sorry.
My hand's
But, like,
broken, Coach Dave.
No, not his hand. He did one of these things where like
He's
like
his teeth.
he moved his glove like over the ball, like he just like kind of like snagged at it.
Hey, he's framing the
and
pitch.
He missed, and he fucking took it like straight in the rib cage. And he was crying, and yeah, it was funny.
Just to summarize here, what's the actual grievance with your team?
The grievance is that I keep having to repeat myself, and they're not listening. And like at first, I have a ton of first year players, so like
Rookies, we call them rookies.
Yeah. So like there's a certain amount of patience that you have to show them when you're trying to teach them stuff. Like they're obviously not going to pick it all up in the first day. But we're like 2 months in now, and I've said the same thing about 1 trillion times, and they're still making a lot of the same mistakes, and it's becoming very frustrating.
Yeah, it sounds like you need to record it, and then in between innings, you got them watching the iPad. That's what they see their heroes do.
It sounds to me like the summary is that Dave is frustrated that he's been an ineffective house league baseball coach to date.
No, it's not my fault. I have a track record.
I hit them in the ribs without gear to let them know.
I told them to do better, but they just didn't do better.
Yeah. So hopefully next week, this will become a gratitude. All right. So speaking of gratitudes, we're going to keep, I think we'll keep the order the same. So special guest Andrew, you're up.
Well, my gratitude's easy. I got to celebrate my first Father's Day as a father yesterday, a 3-month-old daughter. And I mean, the 3 months have been incredible. The support we've had from family and friends, even just getting messages from random people yesterday that I never would have expected to get a message from on Father's Day. It was a special day. Jamie went out of her way to make it special, and yeah, just very grateful.
Well, that's very nice. Happy for you. It's me. I know. I was going to see if you were going to also comment on it, but you decided to save it for your own gratitude, I think. So my gratitude is that my soccer season has started, and while it has not started in the way that I wanted it to, it has started, and that's very exciting because I love soccer, and I really look forward to it. And it's a great way for me to be out there and be active. And living in a house of women, it's often
Nice to get that all out of there.
it's often dominated by very stereotypical female things. So to be able to be around like dudes and bro out for a while is pretty sweet. I alluded to my season not starting the way I anticipated because in the first game we only got a half in because a guy grotesquely broke his leg, like grotesquely, like it was hanging very loose, like kind of like this, but a foot. And initially I heard the noise and I thought it was shin pads colliding, but I'm like, that's really loud. And then the guy like was already on the ground, but people that were like right near him said that he tried to step. And I was like, oh, he Conor McGregored himself. And he was on the ground writhing. And then everyone was like, oh, like calm down, trying to get him like lay still. And then a guy on our team who is notorious about getting under the skin of other players, especially like when there are hard fouls or like questionable plays or like just being lippy.
Who could you possibly be talking
No,
about?
it's not even Luke. It's not Luke. He's not like that. He just uses his body to send messages, and he did not foul this guy either. But his other guy is incredibly lippy. And so when what we thought was true him fashion, he's like, oh, you better call an ambulance for this guy. And then and we were like, what? Like, why? Like, shut up. We don't need you talking smack right now. And he's like, no, for real, call an ambulance. Like his leg is broken. And we're like, oh my gosh. And like, that's when we knew it was serious, because usually he'd say that to a guy who was flopped, right? But he was being completely serious. And so that was our first game. It ended in a tie. We talked to the other team and like we could have tried to play because eventually the ambulance came and took him away. But we're like, why? Like no one should have to play after that. So
Tell the guy to roll out of the way. And wait
yeah,
for the
no,
fucking
definitely
ambulance
not
on
roll out of the
sidelines.
way.
So did Jose Calderon run onto the field and cover his leg with a towel?
Not Jose Calderon, but we threw some stuff out there to be like, you should cover that up. And then they ran out with stuff.
You wouldn't
cover it
even
up.
get close enough to do it yourself?
No, absolutely not. I don't need to see that.
Is it sticking out of his skin?
I don't think it was a compound, but it was definitely like not attached the way that it should. Is exactly so gross. And so then they covered it up, and
It's
then
coming from the guy. We have a fucking
I cringe and like every time I
we
see
have
those.
an Instagram where we just send each other these fucked up breaks and stuff.
Yeah, but it's different in real life. At least like on the video,
So
I can
now you're
say
just
that
like-
it's
now you really have a new appreciation. You're not gonna
no,
say
there's no
those
new
things anymore.
appreciation. It's just when I see it on a video, I can think it's fake. But like this was real because it happened in real time in front of me.
Was it a dirty play, John?
I wouldn't say it was dirty. It was hard and perhaps unnecessary because we're playing like house league, like adult league. Like, why are we doing
That
this?
means it's dirty.
It's not dirty. Like, if it was dirty, he wouldn't have got like our guy would have been destroyed. Like, he would have got his shit kicked in. And like that didn't happen. But like it was definitely like a why are we playing like this? It's Sunday night. And I don't play like that because I value my body a little more. And like if some guys I know is looking like he's going to make a hard play, I just let him make the hard play now. If you want the ball that much more than me at this point in your playing career, cool, man. No sweat. Like I'm not risking anything that I don't have to risk. Like at 36, if I get injured that severely, like that's going to be a lingering issue for me. And I don't want lingering issues. Obviously their team did not take it well. We're very distraught and upset that their teammate was injured, as would be the same thing for our team. So that game ended in a tie. We were supposed to play on Father's Day, but it was an F1 event in Montreal. The Canadian Grand Prix took place. So a bunch of the guys were there for that. A bunch of other guys were doing Father's Day things. And we talked about it at the previous game, being like, oh, like, should we arrange for subs? Do we have enough guys? And people like, yeah, we should be good. And then it turns out that we were not good. So we ended up forfeiting our second game. So in the first 2 weeks, I've played a half worth of soccer. Hopefully this Sunday I'll get to play, because the next 3 Sundays after that I'm away. So in the first 6 games, I will have played at maximum 1.5 games. So that part is frustrating, but gratitude is that soccer does exist, and that there are going to be the barbecues and the banter before, during, and after, and then I'm actually going to be playing soccer. So that's my gratitude.
It's kind of fucked up that you're complaining about the amount of soccer you've been able to play in the last 2 weeks. Well, this guy's like his whole playing career is over.
Yeah, well, maybe you'll have a good comeback story, and then that'll be a documentary we can talk about as another sports movie that's being made. Mississauga Underdog. All right, let's hear your gratitude, Dave.
So my gratitude is that despite the house league team I'm coaching sucking, I'm going to be coaching a 10-year-old all-star team, which hopefully will not suck. Even if we're not as good as the other teams, at least like the talent level will be higher, where I'll be able to do like different. We won't have to work on like, this is how you throw and this is how you catch. Right?
Are you going to have to show them how to pitch? You're rotating your hips. You're not rotating your hips. You have to use that kind of commentary. Or are they going to be?
Well, the guy I was telling that to today is on the teams. That's why I was having that level of conversation with him.
Got it. So, doing some investigative work here, some digging here. It is the coach's son on the all-star team.
Yeah.
There he is. So big smile from Dave on that. So where's he going to be playing?
I don't know. I haven't figured that out yet. Some of the players made it on
merit.
Fuck off. On reputation.
Talk about nepotism.
So there's a couple. So I didn't give a ton of notice before the tryouts. So there were some kids who couldn't make it. So I used a combination of the kids who showed up to tryouts, what I've seen during games, and then like other coaches' recommendations.
Is that highly ranked pitcher preseason rankings? Is he on the team?
Who is that?
The one you were complaining about with the manager with the
9-year-old?
Yeah, that's supposed to be like top rated.
No, he's not.
Tough break.
So there's some kids I haven't really like seen a ton of yet. Especially there's some kids who play in the skill level above where I'm coaching right now that I've never seen before. So I'll have to have a couple practices and figure things out. But there's a chance that he doesn't play a ton.
Is this games?
I'm not just
tournaments?
Gonna force him into the game in situations where he's gonna fuck up and then make him hate it. Like if he has to sit and watch, he has to sit and watch. And that's when I was that age, I ended up like outperforming a lot of my like age peers like in the long run. Like I made it to a higher level of ball and played on better teams than a lot of the guys I played with. But like when I was on the 10-year-old team and the 12-year-old team, I was a sub. Like I wasn't a guy who played all the time. And it's just the way it is sometimes. He's gonna have to figure it out. If he's not as good as the other kids, he's not gonna play.
So are these games on top of your house league, or are they tournaments?
So there's gonna be 2 or 3 tournaments that we go into over the next couple of months, and we'll have extra practices and shit for this team.
Got it.
You know, for what it's worth, Dave, that I always thought that was one of the advantages of playing rep sports, is that you learn that you can try your hardest and still not be the best, and that life isn't always fair, and that you win as a team and lose as a team.
Yeah, there's a ton. That's a lot of what's missing in like team sports now. There's just too much. And this is a whole other thing, but like there's too much. Like everyone needs to get along. Like no, like some kids are better than others, and you have to acknowledge that. You get like, oh, what was I? There's something recently. Oh, the guy. So I was listening to this podcast that's been on with us before, 1420, and he was the one guy, Brent. He's an umpire, and he was umpiring this game. I can't remember the age group, but this kid was throwing like a perfect game, and the opposing team just like conceded the game. They're like, oh yeah, you guys are killing us. We're done now. We don't need
So
to
he didn't
finish
get
this
his
game."
perfect game.
Yeah, so he didn't get his perfect game. So-
Mind games. They're in his head rent free.
So actually I was surprised. I thought the other guys on the podcast, Dave, was gonna like lay into them, but like to me, like you should be like, instead of like worrying about these kids being like, oh fuck, like I didn't do good. We didn't know nobody got a hit, nobody got on base, like we suck. Like, no, celebrate the kid who was amazing and let everyone aspire to be that good.
And also teach the kids to play until the last out and try to break up that perfect game. And that,
Or
it's
just
never
that
over till the
sometimes
fat lady
shit's not going to
sings.
go your way.
Yeah, all of the above. Absolutely. That's
Yeah.
poor sportsmanship. That's bullshit. I bet that guy doesn't stop at stop signs.
Yeah. Or has an aggressive set as a DJ.
Or coaches a team that sucks.
Yeah.
They're all our grievances.
There we
are
go.
covered.
It's just we've run back full circle on this. All right. Well, let's give a special thanks to Andrew for joining us today. Hopefully it wasn't too daunting of a task.
Had tons of fun. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right. So take it easy and we'll talk to you again next time.
See ya.